So Nicky, apart from getting the mix right and the right sort of components within the compost heap, what do you think are the main factors to consider? What sort of conditions are you trying to promote?
Well, the mix basically dictates the conditions, because the four things that we need, that we all need for life on the planet really, we've got to have air, obviously, we've got to have water, we've got to have enough warmth, and we've got to eat the right food. So, but the food really is the food for the microorganisms and the macroorganisms. But in here, if you think, you know, within a teaspoonful of this stuff, there's up to 1 million different microorganisms, and they all need air and water, and they all need the warmth to multiply. If it gets too cold, if it's below 6 degrees centigrade, they just shut off, they're going to sleep, they're going to hibernation basically. And that's one of the big challenges with a small bin like this, because it doesn't really keep the warmth. So you could construct a jacket on it. Some of the bins you can even buy special compost duvet jackets. But this time of year, in May, it should be warm enough to keep the temperatures up. I mean, they will generate heat. It can get up to 60, even 70 degrees centigrade. It's very, very hot. So that those microorganisms, when they're all kind of, you know, developing, and they're going to go.
Do you have any top tips for keeping your compost heap warm?
You could use bubble wrap, layers of bubble wrap, and tie that round. You could do something creative, I'm sure, with sheep's felt, sheep's wool, make something, or you could use an old quilt.
Could you insulate the inside of the bin? Possibly with cardboard?
Well, you could use cardboard, but I mean, the more that you put inside, obviously you're taking up more space again, so you really want the insulation on the outside to get it back in. But yeah, I mean, a layer of cardboard's going to help. Or you can make your own bins up, but of course people with small gardens, they need to have a fairly compact bin. But actually it's not the end of the world. If you're making, the warmth is not the be all and end all. For most of this growing season it's going to be okay. The worms are going to do a lot of the work anyway. In fact, your compost heap is going to turn into a wormery. You've seen the worms already invading this heap, and it's only in a couple of months. And there's quite a lot of structural material in that, which helps the air for the worms as well, so they'll like it. And in 6 months to a year, you know, you're going to have really nice compost. So it'll just be slower. It won't get to 60, 70 degrees. It'll be above ambient temperature. It might be 30, 40 degrees, but it'll still compost. I mean, compost happens, you know.
Where would you best position your compost bin in the garden?
Well, I've got these in a quite nice, open, sunny position. So they're obviously going to get extra heat from the sun when the sun's out. That helps. But I mean, it's not really critical. You can pretty much put them anywhere, really. I wouldn't put them too close to buildings. You know, a bit further away at the end of the garden. Anywhere's, but pretty much anywhere's fine. And you can move them around the garden, because where they've been, you're going to create very nice soil underneath, you know, and they're easy enough to move, these small bins around, which is that's one of the big plus sides of them, isn't it? They're great.
It's clearly very important to ensure that there's enough air flowing through your compost heap as well. How would you promote sort of aeration? Because obviously we're trying to avoid the bin going anaerobic, and you know, trying to create free flow of air.
It's all down to the food that you're putting in, the mixture of materials. So plenty of stuff like this, structural things that are going to take a long while to break down. Anything woody like that, make sure there's plenty of that, you know, throughout the heap. So you've got a kind of matrix that's holding it apart, that's letting the air flow through. That's all you need, really. And you know, like I say, if you can't find it, if you can't get it, and you should be able to get it. I mean, look, I've just old bits of stick. I use a no-dig system, so I'm not putting lots of carbon, I'm not digging it into my soil afterwards, I'm putting it on the top, so that anything like that, any big bits of chunky woody stuff, is gradually incorporated into the soil structure, you know. And that's pretty important too. Because what you don't want is this horrible, impacted, that's what happens with no structure. A horrible, smelly, skanky mess like that, which you really got to try and break up as much as possible as you put it in, you know. And then, because it's just like pickled food waste. So that's why I'm doing it like this, breaking it up, putting the structure back into it. And like I said before, the cardboard will help to absorb some of the moisture, but it won't give you the structure. You've got to have something chunky in there, chunky chip.
So a good indicator that you haven't quite got the mix right, if say it was too moist, would be the aroma. It would be quite a bad odour, presumably.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what gives composting a bad name, isn't it? People that just don't put enough air into it, and that's really all it is. If there's not enough air, things don't break down. I mean, look, that's down the bottom. That's been there for a couple of months. It's still peelable. Look at that, absolutely amazing. I don't know what it was in the compost in the first place, to be honest. But nothing has happened to that. Preserved. It's preserved it. Preserved in alcohol.